Good morning, everybody. You've reached the Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1, your hometown station. Thank you guys for tuning in this morning on this rainy Friday morning here in November. I got a bunch of stuff to go over today, real estate stuff to go over today. We've got a special guest in studio today. Shelly Kanke with On Point Escrow is with us. We're going to learn all about escrow stuff and how escrow works and why escrow works and all that good stuff. And I got a couple of cautionary tales for you with escrow as well we're going to talk about. There's certain things you should do by yourself and certain things you should ask other people to help you with. Escrow is something you really shouldn't do by yourself. We'll talk about all that as well. But first, as always, we're going to start the show off with kind of a market wrap-up where things are at. And really, the bottom line is this. I got some headlines for you, but the bottom line is this. Housing prices are coming down. If you're not aware of that, then let me be the first to tell you. I've been saying this now for the last year. Housing prices are coming down. I was telling you they were set to come down. I told you when they would come down, and I told you how much. And so far, although I've been off a little bit, I was off by a couple of weeks, maybe a month as to when they started to fall. And I said we'd lose about 5% by the end of the year, and we've lost about 7%, so I was a little overly optimistic so far, but I think the trend is not hard to spot. And again, those people like to go online and say that I'm some sort of prophet. This isn't prophecy; it's just math. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's just math and watching the trend lines, and none of this is new. I mean, the bottom line is when things are not affordable, people buy less of them, whatever the commodity is. And when the commodity is housing, that is certainly true. So you have fewer buyers in the market, and right now what you have is a situation where sellers are coming back in droves, and as a result, prices are going down. So let's get into a couple of these headlines. So we've got, let's see, first one from CNN. This is the California Association of Realtors put this out on their website. Data shows trouble for U.S. housing market. Here's another one from NBC. Housing crisis turns the U.S. into a nation of renters. Here's another one from Newsweek. This is actually a really good article. Foreclosures are surging under Donald Trump. Now, they're, of course, making a connection to Donald Trump, and I get why. But if you're going to say you're responsible for the economy and take credit for it, then you got to be responsible for it when it goes to heck as well. And that's definitely what's going on, those of you who aren't aware. 53% of homes lost value this year. That's around the United States. So basically, more than half of the houses in the United States are worth less now than they were at the beginning of the year. So we're going to talk about all these things real quick. We're going to go over some of this stuff. So let's get into it. Data shows trouble for the U.S. housing market. Mortgage rates have retreated, but homeowners aren't looking to jump in. This is CNN 3 days ago. Pending home sales are up just 0.7% in late October. That's the smallest gain in 4 months. Even with the average mortgage rate finally dropping to the lowest level in a year, it got just a hair above 6%, never really dipped under 6, and we're about 6.25 now. Lowering borrowing costs could bring shoppers off the sidelines, but stubbornly high rates and economic uncertainty are continuing to keep buyers' wallets closed. Again, buyers aren't coming into the market, and it's really mostly first-time buyers. I mean, the first time, there was just a report that came out a couple weeks ago that the National Association of Realtors did, that discovered really that the average age of a home buyer. When I bought my first house, I was 19, so I was a little ahead of the curve. But the average home buyer in the 1990s and the early 2000s was 25, and it kind of crept between 25 and 30. Now that number is 40, and next year it'll be higher. Can you imagine that, buying your first house at 40, 45 years old? A little late to the game to be able to make any serious equity with it. AARP did a study some years ago, and they said that 98% of all U.S. Homeowners need, not want, need the equity built up over a long period of time in their house to be able to retire. And that doesn't mean retire well. That means be able to eat. So, yeah, not getting into that game, getting into it at 40 is very, very dangerous and very, very difficult. Not necessarily the greatest thing ever. So you got to get in early. Anyway, so according to Redfin, as reported by Business Wire, the typical home is now taking 48 days to sell. That is the slowest October pace since 2019. Buyers have gotten cautious and picky, and they're waiting for the right deal that feels the right time. It's taking longer to sell houses. That's another signal, another sign that houses are dropping. I mean, if you have a house and your neighbor's house sold for $850, let's say $950, and you want to put your house on the market for $950, let me tell you, you missed the bus. It's not going to be that. You better commit it someplace closer to $900,000 because that's just where we're at these days. That's just the reality of it. Otherwise, house isn't going to sell. You got to be a deal or the house isn't going to sell. It doesn't always have to be a deal price rise. Maybe yours is a deal because yours is the only one with the super nice kitchen or the super nice view or the RV parking or whatever it is. But you got to have some sort of hook, and if you got no other, it got to be price. That's just where we're at. Housing crisis turns the U.S. into a nation of renters. The U.S. housing market has entered into a deep freeze with record low home sales and rising fears that America is becoming a nation of renters. According to Redfin, only 2.5% of U.S. homes changed hands between January and August of 2025. That's just 25 homes per thousand, and that is the lowest rate in 30 years. During the 2021 pandemic, that figure was closer to 40 per thousand. So we're doing essentially half of what we were doing even during the pandemic. The volume, this isn't price, this is volume. Remember, you got two sort of things you got to keep in your head at the same time. One is the value of the property, and the other is how many properties are selling. Both of those right now are depressed. There's a stat from that same NAR report. There was a stat I like a lot, well, terrifying, I suppose. In fiscal 2024, 74% of all realtors in the United States, licensed realtors like myself, 74% did not sell a single house because the volumes are so low. I mean, imagine those of you out there, whether you have an employer or whether you're self-employed, imagine what your business looks like if 74% of it didn't happen last year. So the real estate market has just been cratered because there's not enough volume going on. So there's not enough realtors and lenders and escrow and all the ancillary folks, all of us who work in the industry. There's just not enough business going on. And the business that is going on now that we're now seeing is driving prices lower, not higher, because we have more inventory than we need. We've had about a 40% surge in inventory in the last 3 months. And prices are coming down. The wise seller gets ahead of that curve and lets the market come to them. You cannot be ahead of that curve by pricing it over high and expect the market to come to you. It's just not going to. Anyway, so existing home sales in 2024 fell to the lowest level since 1995, and 2025 isn't looking much better. Analysts say the housing market's freeze won't thaw soon. The Fed's caution on rate cuts, along with rising material and insurance costs, has kept affordability near record lows. Whether the U.S. becomes a nation of renters hinges on the policies that boost supply, like zoning reform, which I'm in favor of, seller tax breaks, which I'm hugely in favor of, curbs on bulk investor buyers, keep the huge industrial buyers out of 40, 50 houses at a time and creating such the rental values. But now the pattern is clear. Home buying is down, renting is up, and the American dream is increasingly comes with a lease. So yeah, you got buyers who are in distress. We got sellers who don't either. You have to know to lower your sales price or your asking price, or it's not going to sell. And this is all the data that underlies all that. Foreclosures are surging under Donald Trump. This is a Newsweek from the 14th of this month, a few days ago. Foreclosure activity in the U.S. is on the rise in 2025, a notable shift that began to undo a decade of relative stability. According to property data from the analytics firm ATTOM, which is a great source to look at, you can go to their website anytime. They have a lot of great data there. 36,766 properties had a foreclosure filing in October, making that a 3% rise from September and a 19% jump over the past year. And that is the 8th consecutive month of foreclosure filings going up. Now, the filings are one thing. They're up about 20% across the board on average. They're saying 19 in this report, but it's about 20. But the bigger thing is how many houses are actually going to foreclosure, and that's the bigger telling number. There's a 40% rise in foreclosures being conducted. In other words, there's a 20% rise in foreclosures being filed. Hey, you didn't pay your mortgage, your house is in foreclosure, but there's a 40% rise in the number of houses that are actually being foreclosed on, and that is a terrifying number. And what that tells you is the banks are becoming much harder to work with because they know the same thing I'm just telling you, which is prices are going down. A bank knows they are better off foreclosing on a house right now than they are 6 months from now, because 6 months from now, that house is going to be worth less. So they become incredibly aggressive. Those of you who are having trouble, you can always still call me. I'll get into it for you. We're still successful with these things. We still save people from foreclosure on a daily basis. And I have a number of tricks up my sleeve to do it. So if you are in trouble with a foreclosure, I give my number out all the time. Give me a call. Preferably not when I'm on the air, but give me a call. 661-714-1400. That's literally my personal cell phone number. I give it over on the air. If you call and I don't answer, just send me a text and I will call you back as soon as I can. I get quite a few of these in the course of a day, as you might imagine. Again, that's 661-714-1400. That's my personal cell phone number. You can also find me here at the station, just khts.com. I also have my own website, richsherman.com. You can go to that as well. And Sherman is spelled S as in sugar, Z as in zebra, E-R-M-A-N. It's not S-H like it should be, it's S-Z, something about Russian Polish ancestry, they tell me. Anyway, why does all this stuff matter? It matters because while the numbers remain low in the historic context, the experts are telling us that they pale in comparison, compared to levels that we saw during the housing crisis 2008 through 2012. But the increase comes amid broader signs of financial stress across the economy, including record high household debt, rising car repossessions, rising bankruptcy filings, and surveys all revealing widespread financial pessimism. And the reason for that is, and this is why the under Trump part's an important part of that article, whether you like him or hate him really isn't relevant. We can all agree he is a chaos agent. Call him change agent if you want, but I call him a chaos agent because he does one thing earlier in the day and does something else later. And markets, especially financial markets, abhor instability. And that man represents more instability than this country has seen probably since its founding. And we're just going to have to ride with that. I mean, the markets are just going to have to adjust to it. One last article I want to go over with you guys. We'll go to break. 53% of U.S. homes lost value this year. According to new research from Zillow, more than half of American homes have declined in value over the past year, marking the highest share in over a decade. As of October, 53% of every U.S. house has lost value compared to a year ago. That is up sharply from just 14% in 2024. This represents the largest share of homes declining in value since April of 2012, when the housing market was bottoming out after the Great Recession. Listen, the widespread nature in the recent declines makes a significant shift in makes this significant shift in the housing market. The steepest declines have hit the West and the South. California's as west as you get. The West and the South particularly hard. Here are the metros where the largest share of homes have lost value over the year, according to Zillow. Denver, Colorado leads the list. Denver, Colorado has 91% of homes in Denver have lost money in the last year. The percentage I'm going to give you is how many percentage of homes in that area have lost over the last year. The value's gone down over the last year. And the second piece I'm going to give you is how much they've lost. So in Denver, they've lost 91% of homes there have lost value in the last 12 months. The average decline, 9.7% from peak. Austin, Texas is number 2 on that list. 90% of homes are down there. They've lost 20.5% from peak, which is a whole lot less than Denver, a whole lot more rather than Denver, Colorado, but not quite as many homes have lost value. Sacramento, California, here we go. 88% of houses in Sacramento have lost value in the last 12 months, and that is down 8.7 from their peaks. That's 8.7.5. Give you some more California numbers. San Francisco, 83% of homes in San Francisco are now have lost money in the last year. That's 14.8% from peak. So people lost on average about 14 to 15% in the Bay Area. Los Angeles, here we are. I think we're number 12 on the list, rather. Number 12 on the list, Los Angeles, California. 79% of homes in Los Angeles are worth less now than they were 12 months ago. And that is down 7.5% from peak. If you guys listen to the show regularly, you know I was saying we'd lose about 5% over the course of this year, and it turns out so far, 7.5% we've lost. San Diego, California, 78% of homes, down 8.2 from peak. San Jose, California, 78% of homes have lost value in the last 12 months. That's down 10.3% from peak. And last but not least on our California list, Riverside, California, which is number, I think, 17 or 18 on this list. Riverside, California, 74% of homes in Riverside are down, and that's 6.5 from peak. As opposed to Los Angeles, 79% are down, 7.5 from peak. So yeah, we've dropped 7.5% according to this. So the ultimate result of this is another article from MarketWatch. Home sellers have cut prices because the housing inventory has surged and because prices are down. So what do we get from all of this? All the data I just spewed at you there at record speed. Prices are down. They're going to keep coming down. Until the interest rate gets under 6%, preferably somewhere around 5%, we're looking at a weakening market. Basic supply and demand. More houses are coming to market. Fewer people are there to buy them. We've completely destroyed the first-time buyer market, which is the first domino that needs to fall to move other markets. You know, the first-time buyer buys the condo, that guy in the condo buys the house, that guy in the little house buys the big house, and away we go. If you don't have that first domino falling, it's hard to make the market move, and first-time buyers have been shelled. Most first-time buyers can barely afford the rent that they're paying. That certainly can't afford to transfer that into a house. Although, if you are renting, I should mention this, we have a program in the office called the rental rebate program, where we can give you 10% of the rent you've already paid to go buy a house, because we are fighting the affordability issue, and we're taking it head on. So we will literally give you money to help you buy a house. If you're a renter and you're renting a property and you want to be an owner, we can make it easier for you. Also because I'm pretty good at this, I do a lot of it. But more importantly, because we will give you money, and it is real money. You can spend it on anything you'd like. You can spend it on carpet, paint, fix-up, closing costs. We use it for that a lot. But again, it's 10% of the rent you have already paid back to go buy a house. So if you're looking to buy or if you're a renter, you might want to give me a call. It's 661-714-1400. I'll tell you all about it, but it is real money, and we give you 10%. Comes largely out of the realtor commission, and we give you that back so you can buy a house. It makes it a lot easier for a lot of people. But having said that, the payments are still really high for most people, a lot higher than most first-time buyers can take, and they have to come down. So the interest rates have to come down. This is just a market reality, and the purchase prices, the value has to come down. So we're in that correction right now. If you know that, you can make value of it. You can make use of it. So if you're a seller, get that price down and get that house sold. It will be worth less 6 months from now than it is now. If you're a buyer, wait as the interest rate comes down, get yourself ready, get yourself prepared, find programs like mine and others that can help you get into a house and get your ducks in a row and be ready. So when you find the right house, you're ready to jump. So that's pretty much the lesson. If you're a seller, get that price down and get that house sold. If you're a buyer, get yourself in a position and be ready to go because, good times are coming for you guys. Buyers have more control now than they have seen in the last decade. And I think that's a good thing. Sellers have had it kind of all on their side of the plate for a little bit too long. So it's starting to go the other way. If you have any questions about anything I've said today, you want to go over any of this in person, you want to call and tell me I'm wrong, that's fine. Give me a call, 661-714-1400. That's the number, 661-714-1400. I'm Rich. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix on KHTS, FM 98.1, your hometown station. We have Shelly Kanke in as a special guest with On Point Escrow. We'll be talking to her as soon as we get back from break. So please listen, won't you? Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you for listening. We have a special guest in studio today, Shelly Kanke with On Point Escrow. Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Get on, you got to get closer to the mic. People can't hear you. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for sitting with us. We're going to go over all things escrow. You guys will learn a lot about this. You'll get to meet Shelly, who's a lot of fun. She's been my escrow officer for a number of years. I don't want to say how long because it makes me seem older than I'd like you guys to know. It's been a while, though, and she does a great job. I'm very fond of her. Our clients are very fond of her as well. I recommend her very, very highly. And she just changed some things. So let me read you her little intro here since we went to the trouble of writing one. This morning, we welcome Shelly Kanke, a highly respected escrow officer with On Point Escrow. Shelly has over 2 decades of experience serving the Santa Clarita Valley. She began her career at just 19 years old as a receptionist for an independent escrow company. Within 6 months, her love of numbers and problem solving moved her into the back office, and she learned how to navigate some of the toughest transactions. In 2024, Shelly moved to a leading local escrow company, and quickly advanced from lead assistant to escrow officer in her own right. By the end of 2005, she was running her own, that's 20 years ago now, she was running her own desk and closing everything from simple refinances to complex commercial deals, as well as owner will carry transactions, which are usually kind of more difficult because they're persnickety. In 2016, she stepped into the role of escrow manager while continuing to oversee an escrow unit. Nearly a decade later, when the company she was working for many years sold, she chose to open her own office, which is now On Point Escrow, which is a local boutique escrow company backed by Fidelity, which is a Fortune 500 company, so you kind of get the best of both worlds there. This ensures Shelly can continue providing her clients with both the personal service she is known for, while at the same time having the support of a much larger organization. She's lived in Santa Clarita Valley since she was 13. She built her entire career here in the community that she loves. She and her husband have you have 23 kids? You don't have 23 kids. I'm pretty sure that's a typo. She has 2 kids, Aiden and Emily. Although 23 would be a whole different story. Please welcome Shelly Kanke, true expert in escrow, lifelong problem solver, and someone who still loves the numbers just as much as the day she started.
Yes, thanks,
So
Rich.
welcome in. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
So we got a bunch of stuff to go over today. I think people are going to enjoy a lot, other than your bio, of course. So let's ask I'll ask you kind of the base questions so people understand why this is important. I get people all the time, especially first-time buyers or people who've never bought a house before. They don't even understand what escrow does or what escrow is for. So what is escrow? What does escrow do?
Escrow is the neutral platform between 2 different parties who both want the same goal. It's neutral. Escrow does not represent either party in a transaction where they're solely to hold funds and hold documents. We prepare the paperwork and handle the accounting for the real estate transaction.
You're sort of the hub of the wheel.
Yeah.
Because everything has the lender has to go through escrow. You help get all that sorted out. Any inspections that are done, especially if you're calling for repairs and stuff like that, all that gets submitted to escrow as well. So the realtors do their job, which is kind of frontline stuff. The lender does their job, which is sort of frontline stuff. But escrow is sort of who knits it all together. Also with title, most importantly, and taxes. We'll talk about that a little bit later as we get into it. So without escrow, you're kind of lost. I don't know if you could. I suppose you could close a real estate transaction with an attorney or something, not run escrow, but it'd be very foolish. And dangerous. So even if you're an owner will carry, you're better off having escrow do it because you want them to dot the I's and cross the T's, do the math for you. So that sort of leads into my next question, which is why would a home seller or buyer or homeowner who's refinancing use an escrow company?
Well, let me answer with a question. Why would a buyer give a seller $50,000 to hold the property while they're doing their investigations? Like what escrow does is hold the funds neutrally so that there's no conflict.
Exactly.
You need an escrow so that you have a neutral person in between.
Now, those of you who've moved here from the East Coast or other places where they don't quote unquote use an escrow, they do. They just don't call it escrow. They call it a closing agent, or they'll call them attorneys or whatever. But it's really the same thing. It's a neutral third party that I didn't even think about that. But in addition to everything else you do, holds funds, and all those funds have to be audited and everything, so there's no shenanigans can go on. And it's very careful. Even when an escrow falls apart and funds have to be returned, everybody has to agree to that. Otherwise, they stick with escrow unless there's a court order. So.
Mutual agreement.
Neutral agreement. Very, very important, because without escrow, without a neutral third party, it's even if everybody is in agreement, it's still very, very difficult to get anything done without somebody who is, when you go into the mountain and having somebody who is that neutral third party who coordinates everything. And that's the other thing I would say, in addition to holding funds and being a neutral third party, it's coordination.
Right.
I don't have the time. I don't have the time or the expertise to talk to the franchise tax board and talk to the assessor's office and talk to all these other entities, title companies, and all the other stuff that you guys have to do to keep it all going. So, well, my next question was, what is the escrow process, which we sort of discussed, and what's your role as an escrow officer? Probably we can talk about that a little more. What is sort of your role as an escrow officer? What's your sort of like being, I don't know, running a 3-ring circus and you're the one in the big hat. So that's kind of the way I've looked at it. But that's probably just my own take on it. In your words, what's your role as an escrow officer?
I'm an instruction taker, so I look at a transaction based on what the buyer and the seller have agreed to, and put together the terms, prepare the paperwork based on the agreement, and make sure everybody else is doing their part, getting the lender what they need, making sure title to the property is clear so the seller can give the buyer clear title. And basically, we don't do anything without instruction to do it. So we're not only neutral, but we're the robot in the transaction. Each party has to specifically advise us in order for something to happen.
Well, sure. You're also, because you're a neutral third party, it's a lot easier for you to make sure that all parties have to come to agreement before anything happens than it is for parties on one side or another on a transaction, especially if it's gotten acrimonious in any way.
Right.
Because everybody knows you have to, escrow is escrow, and what escrow says, it just goes or there's no deal. I mean, that's part of the, I mean, I don't mean to sound like you guys are authoritarians. That's certainly not the position.
It's the opposite, yeah.
It's because escrow takes instruction, but everyone has to agree in order for anything to move forward. So, this is one of my favorite questions, actually. Chelsea on my team came up with this. What are some common misconceptions people have about escrow? What are the biggest things that people think escrow is that it isn't?
I think, honestly, people don't realize that we're not the authoritarian. We are there specifically to take instruction. I don't think a lot of people either realize that everything through escrow is rescindable. So if you sign something and it's held in escrow, and escrow is the only person who has a signed copy, you, as a buyer or seller, can call escrow and tell escrow, I'm not authorizing you to use my signature on that paper. Mm-hmm. It is my position to give it back to you and say, okay, let me know when you're ready. I can't tell you what the liability will be for you or the repercussion for rescinding your signature, but ultimately that's my position in the transaction as their person in trust. Mm-hmm. So
it's just to run the show. I know I get clients a lot who are convinced that escrow is taking a side. And you can't.
There's no side. Yeah, there's nothing in it for me to have a side either way.
Yeah, well, that's why I tell clients all the time: is escrow side is escrow side. It's escrow is a separate, important, co-equal entity, but a separate entity. And escrow does what escrow needs to do. Nothing more, nothing less. That's just what has to happen. Yeah. And what escrow needs to do is all dictated by the circumstances that escrow has been asked to fill out. Right.
Right.
I'll make sure I've been practicing that one. Yeah. I had that right. Okay. Oh, here's a fun one. What's something people are most surprised to learn about the escrow process? Aside from the fact that you're, a neutral third party, I'm sure that surprises some people. But what in your experience, what most surprises people to learn about escrow in the process?
It's a 3-day closing process in LA County. People think that they can easily just say, okay, let's close escrow. But in order to close an escrow, all of the paperwork gets signed day 1. Uh-huh. Day 2, all of the money comes into escrow. Day 3, we actually close.
That's the last 3 days. There's usually
the last, well, of course,
leading up to that. But yeah,
of course. But like if it was a cash transaction, sure, we could potentially close an escrow in 1 week if it was a cash transaction, sure, because it takes 3 days to actually set up the closing.
Complete the process. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's largely, I think, because of the assessor's office in Los Angeles. Because
the recorder, yeah.
Yeah, because the recorder's office, because they are, and I'm not picking on them. If you work the recorder's office, or if don't yell at me. I think they do a pretty thankless job under pretty difficult circumstances. And the bottom line is they do not have enough personnel, even with the market as depressed as it is right now, even with this little volume of going back and forth as we've seen lately. They're still overworked and underpaid at the assessor's office. That's a tough job to do. So thank you to those of you who work at the assessor's office, the recorder's office. We appreciate you guys. And we just wish you could do it a little faster. We know it's not your fault. We just wish you could do it a little faster, but thank you. Okay, see, I was wondering how you were going to answer that question. I had no idea. That was a good one. I hadn't thought of that. That it takes 3 days from when you think the escrow should be closed to when it actually closes because of the process that we're in a minimum of 3 days, if not longer. Okay, well, here's another one. What do you do? What does escrow do to safeguard buyers and sellers against fraud in escrow?
Well, first of all, we got to make sure everybody realizes how much fraud is actually out there. There are criminals out there who are capable of taking an email correspondence, switching around the actual numbers or words, and still sending it where it's supposed to go. It's super scary.
Well, they make it look like the escrow is coming from the realtor, and I had one of these happen to me and one client a couple of years ago. It's either coming from the realtor or coming from the escrow, but they give you a different bank, like sending your deposit to this bank, wire your money to this bank account,
Right.
And the bank account number they're giving is fraudulent. I had a client actually. It's an interesting story. I had a client. I've got a lot of clientele I suppose I shouldn't be saying this out loud, but I have a lot of clientele that are law enforcement, Secret Service, things like that. And with Secret Service's main job, other than protecting people from, everyone wants to take a bullet for the president kind of a thing. But in addition to doing that, which is the highlight stuff, most of what the Secret Service does is integrity of the dollar, integrity of the U.S. funds, the sovereignty of the dollar. And so they get into this stuff. So when mortgage fraud, or not mortgage fraud, excuse me, when we get a fraudulent one of those emails, wire fraud, thank you. When wire fraud occurs, which is such a big problem, wire fraud, that we get about once a month we get a notice from CAR, some other body that warns us about it. We have a whole disclosure now when you buy or sell a house that we warn you about it. And there are certain protocols we go through to make sure, and I'm sure you tell people as well, certain protocols they go through to make sure they're sending it to the right place. But when wire fraud does occur, what happens is, and a client of mine who's a Secret Service agent who investigates these sort of things was nice enough to share this with me. When it occurs, the money goes from, they press the button to activate the wire, and within about 90 seconds, that money is gone, out of the country, no longer traceable, done. Because people think, well, it was a mistake. I made a mistake at the bank. It was all done electronically, so I can just reverse that mistake. Nope. It's that fast. The criminals, they're so incredibly well organized now, and this is an organized crime thing. This isn't like somebody thought this up because they were going to rob a liquor store or commit wire fraud. It's not that's not how it works. These are high-level criminals who are operating in the multi-bazillion-dollar area, because it goes on all over the world, and we get a lot of it in California and a lot of it in the United States. But literally, from when the bank says, okay, send, 90 seconds later, that money is gone and cannot be retrieved. It's just gone. A lot of it, I'm told, winds up in places like Azerbaijan and crazy things.
It's getting better, though. The banks now have a mechanism in place to avoid money being sent or landing and then being directly
overseas,
transferred. So, I mean, it makes our process a little harder, and it makes it take longer for funds to post to a client's account, but
when you
it's
consider the downside, that's kind of a no-brainer, yeah. No, I know where it's gotten a little bit better, which is good. But still, if you're a consumer, please hear when I say this. If you're a consumer and you're going to send a wire for a deposit or whatever it is, especially in a real estate transaction, because that's when the numbers get really large, which is why that's what the criminals go after. Make sure you talk to your escrow officer. Make sure you get directly from them the accounting information as to where it's supposed to go. Confirm it with them, and then just double check with your bank, triple check with your bank. I had clients who've had the person at the bank get on the phone to escrow and make sure that's the right thing and check it out, which I could not endorse more. I think it's a great idea. We encourage people to do that in our own disclosures. But wire fraud is a huge deal, and I had a client lose $50,000. They sent the wire and then called me right after and said, "Hey, did you send me an email?" I said, "No." And they said, "Well, this email looks a little strange." And oh no. And we tracked it down. We know where it went. We know where it exited the country. But there's not a thing you can do about it. Also, nobody in law enforcement wants to take jurisdiction for this. You can't just go to your local sheriff's department and say, "I'm a victim of wire fraud." It's not their fault. It's not their thing. They have no way of helping you.
There's an actual department, though, ICE, that will, get involved.
Which is federal state.
So it's real important that we notify the clients and make sure they're aware of fraud, obviously. But in addition to that, we have safeguards. We have protections to help, make sure that people aren't subject to fraud. We're actually working on, we just unrolled a new product. It's a portal. So instead of communicating via email back and forth, as you would, normally, you do it inside the portal
so it's
to where,
communication.
Nobody can get in. Especially when you're in escrow, I'm asking you for your social security number. I'm asking you for your driver's license number. Those are all very personal details, that we're there to protect. So it's important to have, a secured area where, your information can come back and forth without it being subject to somebody hacking into it. So, we're working on that right now,
integrity
too.
of data is everything in every industry. It's
Right.
particularly important in yours. My
Right.
goodness, my goodness. Well, I tell you what, I'm getting the high sign. Let's go to break. We'll hear from some of the advertisers. When we come back, we're going to talk about sort of the status of escrow companies in general, the industry in general as a result of the incredible downturn in volumes, which is hurting everybody. And then we've got some other fun questions, which are a little bit going to be a little more interesting. So we'll do that when we get back. So please listen to the break. When we come back, we'll get more with Shelly Kanke of Escrow. I'm your host, Rich Szerman. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1, your hometown station. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for listening to the break. Welcome to the third segment of the show. We've got in-house escrow officer extraordinaire Shelly Kanke with On Point Escrow, who's been nice enough to come in and be our guest this morning. So thank you again for coming in. I appreciate that. We're talking about all things escrow and kind of warning you guys about some of the pitfalls out there. And we're talking about fraud and some of this stuff that goes on in there, and how escrow provides a neutral third party and provides a secure portal for transferring information back and forth, because there's so much of your personal information has to go through escrow. It has to be safeguarded. But I want to talk a little before we move. I've got some more questions for you, but I want to talk a little in our last segment here about what's sort of gone on in the escrow industry as a whole, because I've noticed, and I think everybody's noticed, that because of the last, or probably 3 years, I'd say, certainly the last two, 2024 and 25, because there's been so little business going on out there, that all of us, realtors, escrow, title, lenders, all the ancillary services. The roofer I use has been complaining he's been hurting because none of the houses have changed hands lately. So with that downturn in business, which has been about 40%, what have you seen as far as sales and mergers and acquisitions and stuff like that? I mean, I know the company you used to work for, that you were there for many, many years, got bought out, and then that was sort of what encouraged you to go start your own shop. But what else have you seen sort of across the valley?
Well, I would say in Santa Clarita, there's pretty much 4 escrow companies only that have been in business for longer than 25 years. Mm-hmm. Within the last year and a half, 2 out of those 4 companies were purchased by somebody.
Yeah.
And their entire staff is no longer at those companies that was well established and have been in business for 25 years. So if you closed an escrow with somebody in the last, I would say, 2 years or back, you have a 50% chance of working with that company again and having a completely different staff.
Staff changed, yeah. It's like
Right.
changing the roster for a
So
winning team.
there's a lot of changes going on right now within our industry. People making moves and making changes so that
buyouts,
they can.
a lot of mergers, acquisitions, all sorts
Yep.
of fun stuff going on. A lot of companies changing hands, a lot of mergers going on. I've been seeing a lot of that as well. Which worries me, because the more things merge, the less they become independent, the less they become in-house. That's one of the things I like about your and I'm sure, you designed it, your setup with On Point, because you're sort of, you can act as an independent, you can act like
Right.
a boutique shop, yet you still have that firepower if you need it.
Right.
So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And I've seen that happen once or twice in other areas. I don't think anybody's ever tried that sort of thing up here, so I'm really excited about it. I think it's a very, very good thing. And I think it's going to be most importantly, very good for the clients.
Yeah.
Because it's the same level of service, which is great, so
Right.
they're comfortable with it. They don't feel overwhelmed by it.
But now I have new tools.
Yeah.
Yep.
A whole new kit of tools. So that leads into this nicely. If you could change the escrow, this is my question. If you could change the escrow, I want to take credit for it. If you could change the escrow process in California, what would you want to see change?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
That's why I asked it.
But for me specifically,
Sure.
I would say in the state of California, we wait until documents record in order to close a transaction. It could very easily be changed, which this is probably very controversial, and I'm sure my title friends won't appreciate this.
That's why I
But if they issued title insurance when escrow said, okay, I'm ready to go, let's do this, we could close an escrow without having the documents of record. The documents could record at a later time, but the escrow had already been closed because the title company issued title insurance.
How much time would that save?
At least one day.
Okay, so at least so in other words, because one of the things that happens for you guys who don't know this, it's one of the things it's just one of the quirks of the real estate industry, especially in California. We're not alone here, but when your loan funds, you start paying for it.
Right.
So it funds on a Friday, and you don't actually close and take possession until Tuesday. That's 4 days you're paying for a house, which doesn't sound like a lot, but given the prices are and what the numbers are, that's 4 days into your new mortgage that you're paying for that you don't have access to the property. And not only that, the seller is kind of doing the same thing because
Right.
until their loan is paid off, they're paying for that loan as well. So the banks have this really unique, and I promise you this is not an accident. These things don't happen like this. There's too much money involved for this to be an accident. It'd be a happy little accident for the mortgage industry. What winds up happening is 133 Main Street might have somebody new moving in who's paying a mortgage for a house they don't live in, and a seller who sold the house who's moving out is also paying for that same mortgage. So for 3-4 days, you're paying for two mortgages at the same time. So both banks make money on that they otherwise would not have made. So I'm quite sure that's institutional. No, that's what I think the mortgage industry would have more trouble with your plan than title. But it's a good plan because it would save time and it would cut down on some of the distance between funding and closing.
Right.
But the possession is somewhat different because somebody's got to work that out. Sometimes there's time after that kind of thing. But at least would cut down between funding and closing, which would save people a lot of money.
Yep.
So, yeah, California, I love this state. I've lived here most of my life. I like it very much. But unfortunately, in California, we just have this thing, especially with our politics here. Maybe it's because we're such a large state, but it's just goofy. Most of the stuff that you get out of California, most of the government stuff, are good ideas badly implemented. I say that on a daily basis. It is a good idea to increase transparency. It is a bad idea to suggest people sign over 100 pages worth of disclosures, because what you're doing is ensuring that no one's going to read them. And it's the same sort of stuff with this. It's a very, very good idea to be able to have everything in place and done prior to closing, but you can still accomplish the same thing, save some time, and not have to have banks in effect double dipping.
Right.
So I'm sure I think the mortgage industry would have a fit if you started trying to do that. So, okay, my next question: what do you see people struggle with most in escrow? What's the pitfall you see most people fall into in dealing with escrow?
I think that, excuse me, specifically sellers don't realize that there's documents that they'll need to provide through a transaction. If they're selling their primary residence, half of their stuff is in boxes, so they don't have access to their trust agreement that was created 7 years ago, but it's important. So
Yeah,
I would
extremely.
definitely want to suggest that if you're in the process of listing your property, make sure you get out those particular documents that are for the your trust or any other documents that might be relevant. Talk to your realtor. Hopefully they have a good relationship with an escrow officer who can confirm
Yeah.
what'll be required.
When you get started, in other words, before you even put the house on the market, get your documents in order.
Right.
Make
Definitely.
sure you put them in a file, have them ready. You shouldn't have them ready anyway, but just have them. Also, I want to touch on one other thing, which is a little outside your field, just sort of a buyer beware kind of thing. As we talked about, if you guys listen to the show regularly, we had a probate attorney and wills and trust attorney extraordinaire, Renee Speckerman on. I always mispronounce her next name. Renee, if you're listening, I apologize. But she's fantastic. If you want to get in touch with her, let me know. I'll be happy to get in touch with her. But she was warning, and we get into this all the time, people think there's a department of trusts.
Oh,
Like, if you don't have the trust, you can go find some state agency that just has it. If you don't have the trust, if you've lost the trust documents, you have a big problem.
yes.
You have a big, nasty problem, which probably means you're going to have to go through probate,
Probate.
and you're going to have to sort it out with a judge in probate, which is going to take you a
Right.
while. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and you're probably looking at a year. If it's just a house that's expedited, maybe 6 months if you're lucky. So if you have a trust, if your parents have a trust, if your friends have a trust, make sure they have a copy of the document. And as Renee taught us, what you should do is you should have 3 copies. One that goes in a safety deposit box someplace, one that stays in your house, and one that stays with a trusted friend or advisor. All volunteer escrow officers, I probably shouldn't, but with somebody who can just hold on to these things, and I don't mean just because you're doing business with them because they're a friend, that kind of deal. Somebody who holds on to this, so if your house burns to the ground, you have 2 backups. I mean, in the earthquake, in my case, in the earthquake, we couldn't get my mom's house because part of it fell down. This is the 94 earthquake? 94. Part of it fell down. And the bank that held the safety deposit boxes on Ventura Boulevard, it was demolished. It fell down completely. So luckily, she had a family friend who had a 3rd copy because we needed a copy of the trust to make the insurance claim in that case. This is 94. So yeah, 3 copies out there for wills and trusts. Very, very, very important. Wills too, because there is no Department of Trusts. So if you go to sell your house and you say it's in a trust, and the escrow officer says, "Hey, we need a copy of the trust," and you go, "Well, I don't have that," you got a problem. You're going to have to find a probate attorney. We have some we can recommend to you if this happens. But you're going to have to find an attorney. You're going to have to go through probate. You're going to have to sort it out that way. And your sale of your house was probably just delayed by about a year, would be my guess. But anyway, so make sure you have your documents in a row. We talked about safeguards against fraud and escrow. Let's go to some of these. Let's see. What advice would you give a client when entering escrow? I suppose that would be make sure you have your ducks in a row, have your documents together. Is there anything you want to add to that? Advice to give them?
Other
Be patient.
than that, closing an escrow is like having a due date for a pregnancy. Everybody has to do exactly what they're supposed to
Good
do
analogy.
in order for the escrow to close on time. A lot of times, to follow up on your previous question, things that people don't expect is reasons why an escrow doesn't close on time. The buyer's lender doesn't have everything they need in order to give us the money.
Would
The
you say
last
that's the most
thing,
frequent one?
yeah,
The lender not performing on time?
yes. For several different reasons, of
Oh, no,
course. It
blame
could
anybody.
be
Stuff happens,
property, property problem. It could be
Sure.
a verification of employment, whatever the issue is. But yes, ultimately, the last thing a seller wants me to do is take their deed that they've executed in front of a notary and send it to the county recorder to record to put the property in the buyer's name without having all the money to give them to close the escrow. So realistically, the last thing they want me to do is to close the escrow without being in a position to give them the funds.
Close it,
So
yeah.
close of escrow is not always on the exact due date.
Yeah.
It's based on when everybody gets what they're supposed to together, and I have everything that both parties are requiring in order to facilitate the transfer.
Those of you who are out there who have either gone through this process, or if you're realtors and you listen to this, all realtors, and I think escrow, I'll speak for escrow as well a little bit on this, we all have a standard disclaimer, a standard speech that goes something like, okay, I realize we're scheduled for this date, but escrow closing dates are fluid because you've got this one, that one, the other. I usually give a few highlights of things. I usually tell some stories about things I've seen gone wrong. We had one recently where they needed a divorce decree from 1994. I mean, I get it. They needed to prove that he was buying a house by himself. They needed to prove that he wasn't still married to this person. So I get that, but he was divorced in 1994. So we went and we found it. Now divorces are filed with the court. You can pull those just because you're curious. So we went and found it. It was no big deal, but it did delay us a day. I mean, his lender needed an extra day to get that. We didn't know we needed it until the last minute. And it's a weird thing to ask for, but the lender needed it. So we got it to him and it delayed and it funded and it closed and everybody was happy. But, it did delay it a day, and other things come up that delay as well. So, I mean, it just happens. I find it surprising when something does actually hit on time. Even an all-cash deal, I find it surprising.
I would say definitely, though, if you have a closing date and you have movers scheduled, don't cancel anything. Do what you do and let escrow run around you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to be super stressed and, waiting, and nobody has the ability to confirm the exact time when anything's going to happen. That's another thing I want to mention too, is a lot of times as escrow, we're waiting for the county recorder to give us confirmation of recording. That can come at 9 o'clock in the morning. That can come at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I have no idea. When I get into the office in the morning, all I can do is prepare. But I don't know if it's going to come at 10 o'clock or after wire cutoff time, which is 2 o'clock. So a lot of people are surprised when, we explain to them that it could be any time during the day, but there's nothing, that would be something I would want to change.
Yeah, I had that to the list. It's weird. It's a very exacting process, but from the outside, it can sometimes seem like a very inexact process because there are just so many moving parts.
Right.
You've got title, you've got escrow, you've got the lender if you're getting a loan, which is most people. You've got inspectors you have to deal with, the realtors, of course. I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's a list of as long as your arm. And if everybody's doing everything in concert when they're supposed to do, great. But all it takes is one person to make one mistake, or not even a mistake. Sometimes things just happen to push everything out a little bit. So it just sort of happens. We'll wrap up on this question. I think it's a good question. What do you love most about what you do?
Oh, the problem solving, the numbers specifically. I love accounting all day long. I love helping people. I love it when my realtors call me or, email me and say, okay, here's my situation. What are my options? Where I can give them, well, if you do this, then this could potentially happen. If you do that, then we'll be able to go this way. Obviously, I'm not an advisor to a buyer or a seller, but a lot of my realtor clients will call me, and I'm happy to go over strategy.
Yeah, we play what if with you all the time.
And yeah, because I've pretty much seen all. I've seen it.
That's the benefit of 20 plus years in this business. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so in addition to being neutral and being there for the buyer and the seller and to making sure that everything's as smooth as possible, which is my number one priority, I'm also there for my realtors to strategize numbers-wise based on what their clients need.
How do we make this work? Yeah, we've had that conversation a million times over various properties. I also do a lot of distress stuff, a lot of crazy stuff, so I think I probably have more than that than most, I think. But anyway, so yeah, we'll end on it. Thank you very much for coming in. I very much appreciate it. So hopefully you guys listening learned a little bit about escrow and kind of escrow works. You got got to meet Shelly, and her company's On Point Escrow. I'd encourage you guys to check her out. Do you guys have a website up and running yet?
Yeah, just this week. It's onpointescrow.net.
Give them a phone number.
It is 661-789. No, what is it? 888-7894. 661-888-7894.
Well, it's excellent. It is a new office. If you do get confused or anything, you can always call me. You can reach me at 661-714-1400. I will point you in the right direction. That number again is 661-714-1400. I've been your host, Rich Szerman. You've been listening to The Real Estate Fix on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1. Thank you guys for listening. I very much appreciate it. You guys have a great weekend. Be good humans. Bye-bye.